to work now, but they only work.
Push the push.
Their system
All
records.
right. Oh, the R's are real, man.
Now call the February 4th, 2020 meeting of the Hendry County School Board to order. Will you please rise and join me, if you're so led, in the invocation and pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could remain standing for a moment of silence in recognition of Sylvester Humphrey. Mr. Humphrey recently passed away. He was employed as a teacher, administrator, and director of transportation, and worked in the district from 1960 through 1997. Thank you.
That wasn't me.
And I usually pay attention.
Sorry. It's okay. Mr. Superintendent, we have a recognition tonight.
Yes, we do. From Coosa Middle School, members of the Ag class.
Yes, sir. There's a big chapter.
Like the podium?
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna end up doing. That way they got someplace.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce them. My name is Kaylin Hartley, and I'm the new Ag teacher and FFA advisor over at Lewiston Middle. And I am in my 8th year teaching now, and teaching Ag and being an FFA advisor. I love it, wouldn't rather do anything else, and I've considered it a great blessing to have come to this school because these kids are awesome. They really are, and they've renewed a love for a job that I've always loved, but definitely they've made it better for sure. This is our first year, and we're off and running to a big start. They have had Ag and they have had FFA for a while there, but it's been touch and go, and this year they've really taken off with it. I'm very proud of these young people. So I'm going to let them tell you about what they've done and what they continue to plan to do throughout the year, and I'm just going to pass out papers. So we have President Raylan Peniagua and Enrique Acosta, who is the Vice President, and he's going to be starting off.
So really, this is our first year actually starting FFA in a lot because, like we said, we've been on and off with agriculture and FFA, and I'm really proud of what we've done so far. So in last fall, we've done a lot of competitions and stuff. We did creed speaking, prepared public speaking, opening and closing ceremonies, toll ID, and citrus judging, which I was on, and we placed 3rd in state. So, or in this practice. And toll ID placed 17 out of 68 teams in state, and citrus judging placed 8 out of 27 teams in state. So I'm very proud of us, and yeah. For the leadership conferences, we've attended 2 so far. We've done the COLT training in Haines City, and the chapter president's conference in Daytona Beach. So yeah, that's it for that. And the things that we want to start doing in spring of 2020 is decorate a booth and show the barn bulletin board for the Hendry County Fair, which we're going to do on Friday. We're going to do FFA Week, which my president is going to talk about on February 22nd to the 28th. And then for the competitions that we're going to do is livestock judging in the Plant City on March 6th at the Strawberry Festival, and vegetable judging, which I'm also a part of. We're going to do the qualifier on March 10th, and the state competition on April 24th. So, and we also have one student doing the Agri-Science Fair state competition in the state convention in June. Things that we also want to do in our school is small garden for our school, elementary ag day, which we're going to bring kids from the elementary to talk about our FFA and stuff. We're going to do the end of the year awards banquet and the state convention from June to 14th to 19th. So yeah. Well, also for miscellaneous and stuff, we got 2 lion-head rabbits, which we named Simba and Nala. We did a tour of the adult education welding shop. We did meat stick fundraiser, which we've done really well on, made quite a bit on it. And participated in the Clifton Middle School Fall Festival. So yeah, I'm gonna give the floor to my president.
Okay, thank you. So I want to talk about our FFA week that we're planning. And our FFA week would be February 24th to February 28th. And our FFA week is basically like our homecoming week, but for FFA. So we have a lot of things planned, and we just wanted to do something, one for our members and our teachers, like our staff and faculty, and then our community. So planned out, we have on Monday, February 24th, each of our officers will come in to one of Ms. Hartley's periods, and we will lead leadership games and icebreakers and announce activities for the upcoming week, including our dress-up days. And that dress-up day is called Here by the Flag, and that's American Day patriotic attire. And then Tuesday, February 25th, we want to set up a recruitment booth for all of our students at lunch with information about FFA and a chance to sign up for FFA. So it kind of like recruits them. And then also that day, our FFA members, we'll be giving them like a little something, like a snack outside at lunch. And then also we're planning teacher appreciation gifts, which we want to give them door stoppers and then a popcorn gift me and Ms. Hartley came up with. And then
the ag class will be making the door stoppers also.
That dress-up day is called Ag Career Day, or also we opened it up to if you want to dress like your favorite teacher, you can. So everybody can pick their favorite teacher to dress up as. And then Wednesday, February 26th is our Ag Literacy Day at an elementary school. We're still planning it, and it's still kind of in the works. We still need to choose an elementary school to go to. And then that dress-up day is called Here by the Plow, and that's farm day, so you dress like a farmer or farm animal, or you can even bring a stuffed animal to school. And then Thursday, February the 27th, we're gonna have an FFA meeting where we will be playing Barnyard Olympics in the courtyard after school. So it's just like a fun little game everybody can get involved in if they wanna stay after school in Ms. Hartley's room. And then that day is called Here by the Ear of Corn, and that's going to be like an FFA Spirit Day, so blue and gold. And then Friday, February the 28th, we have something called VIP members. So basically, before we got funds from the government to cover our FFA dues, the members who wanted to be in it and who paid the dues, we turned that money and we basically pay for them to go have lunch. So part of the proceeds go for Friday, and it's called Gleaning. We're gonna go to first, and we're gonna go pick crops through Cross Ministries, and all of that food will be donated to families, local food banks for families. And then for lunch, we're going to Sunrise after that.
Well, very good. Tell me a little bit more about that fundraiser. What are you selling?
Meat sticks.
Oh, meat sticks.
Beef sticks?
Yes, sir.
And
They're
that's
kind of
still
like,
going on?
Yes, sir, until FFA week is basically, so the end of February is when we're gonna cut it off. and I'm actually getting ready to place an order, so if you've got some that you want me to order, trust me, I will get
Well,
you.
I will be at school tomorrow, but is that the only fundraiser you're doing?
Right now, yes. I also plan on sending out, what I've done in the past is a sponsorship letter and basically offering some advertisement through our chapter. So just, we're kind of getting our feet wet, making sure that we have built our name especially. And I've had a lot of great success with that in the past. People really want to help, especially when they know that they're going to get some recognition for that, for their businesses and things like that. So that is going to be another one that we're going to be doing at the end of the year.
What is your budget for this sunrise lunch?
We have about, what do we say? I think it was
35 student members.
35 student members, and they all paid $25 in for the dues. So we have about $700 to work with. We obviously don't want to spend all that because some of that's already gone to other supplies.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be probably around $200 or $300 is what I would assume with that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, they have one more thing for you,
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
And then now, as president of the Clueston Middle FFA chapter, I would like to officially request the declaration of FFA Week in Hendry County on February 22nd through February 29th of 2020.
You have something there for
Yes,
us
sir.
to proclaim? Madam Chair, I would like to read this proclamation and ask for the board's approval.
Yes, Karen.
Whereas FFA in agricultural education provide a strong foundation for the youth of America and the future of food, fiber, and natural resource systems. And whereas FFA promotes premier leadership, personal growth, and career success among its members. And whereas agricultural education and FFA ensure a steady supply of young professionals to meet the growing needs of the science, business, and technology of agriculture. And whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to these students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education. And whereas FFA promotes citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation. Therefore, we do hereby designate the week of February 22nd through 29th, 2020 as National FFA Week. My recommendation is the board approve this.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Second. Any discussion?
I just have one question, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
If Reverend Brown and I show up, can we participate in the Olympics?
Of course, please, God, yes.
I want to race him.
All right, this on my calendar.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Proclamation passes unanimously. Thank you for your work.
Don't mind standing, let's get a nice picture.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask too. Why don't y'all
You want us to come on the front side or?
Y'all good.
either
Take your
that or
seat.
they go on the back, I don't know. Get in there, girl. You're here, go.
You're here, come on. Here, this is hold it. Very good job. Very good job. Come on.
Get it? One, oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, cheese. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And just
Thank
throwing
you.
that out
Thank
there, if we do have a wish list. So if y'all have anything, like,
Before all the CMS people leave, I just want to recognize a teacher who had to leave us because of an illness in his family. And he has also told us he's also left the country. So he's in Panama, I believe. And we will present this plaque and give it to Eduardo Martinez, a teacher at Clueston Middle School, in appreciation for 8 years of faithful service to Hendry County from the Hendry County District School System, school board members, superintendent, and staff this 4th day of February 2020. Okay, so we will get this to you. And before So you put a name to a face. I will be meeting with the Clewiston Middle School faculty tomorrow at some time. And Tina Kelly, if you could stand, please. Tina Kelly I will be asking the board to appoint her as the new principal at Clewiston Middle School.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, middle school people, if you want to stay, feel free to stay. But if you want to leave, now is a good time to leave.
Okay, at this time, do we have any citizen comment on agenda items? Okay, I don't see anyone lining up for that, so let's move on to our consent agenda. Is there anything for discussion that anybody would like to have pulled and put under action items?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to discuss the Vanguard janitorial services.
Okay, can we move that under action item, let's make it action item B. I would like to move line item E to action item C. And line item F, the revised administrative support salaries, to action item D.
And Madam Chair, I would like to move item K, budget amendments.
Okay. Can we move that
To
to
budget.
board member, where we're having our board member discussion?
That would be-
I'd like to move that to,
Discuss it.
under board member business, under item C, and then just
Perfect.
drop
Together.
discussion and financial report down the letter.
Thank
Which one was it that Mrs.
you.
Nelson?
K, moving K, budget amendments down to budget discussion.
And under board member business, so we can have all our budget
Thank you.
discussion together, right? Okay, so we have the consent agenda minus C, E, F, and K. Do I have a recommendation?
Madam Chair, I would recommend approval of the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
So moved, okay. Do we have any discussion?
Madam Chairman, I may be a little slow, but can you put D there as well, the class size reduction plan, just to have a brief conversation?
Okay, let's move that down to action item E. And let me restate that one. We have the consent agenda minus item C, D, E, F, and K. Do I have a recommendation on that one?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. Let's go down to now, we are into action items, and the first action item is going to be the hearing on proposed policy revisions as advertised. Is there a particular procedure for this hearing?
No, I'll just make it.
We've got to open the hearing
You've
up.
got to open it.
Okay.
And then take any public comment or board comment. And I'll make it.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the hearing on the proposed policies as advertised. This would be the time for any public comment or board comment at this time. Seeing no indication of comment from the public or board on this, I'm going to close the hearing. And Superintendent, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, I recommend approval of the proposed policy revisions as they have been advertised.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we, on action item B, we're going to discuss Vanguard janitorial services. Do I have a recommendation? The superintendent?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the Vanguard janitorial service contract for the finance building.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A second? Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
was looking at that agreement, and did we put out an RFP for this? Has this just been recurring? Yes, ma'am.
This was set up for bid in 2014, so it was the last time it was bid. At that time, we had 2 bidders at the time, and currently it was less than $25,000 because it is 18, so 1,000. Right, it's less than the bid requirement, so it doesn't have to go out for bid. So we have just reviewed it annually. That is correct.
Okay, I was just kind of curious because what they're providing services-wise doesn't really say. It's kind of vague
The
in here.
contract has been vague every year, and I'd be happy to tighten it up, except that there's been no issues. And for example, in December, there's a caveat in there that for the days that we're not there, they charge by the day instead of by the month. So that gets reduced. If there's a day that we're closed for a holiday, they don't charge us for that.
Okay. Yeah, I just feel better if we've got service agreements that we've got an exact scope of work.
I would say that it was in that RFP that went out back in 2014.
Right.
So I could certainly pull that because that's what this has been going on every year.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in this agreement.
As attached as a reference?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I think if we're going to have services done, we want to go by the letter.
So you want me to attach the,
Well, I don't know if anybody,
Are you
I'd like to see what the scope is, so we can read it and know exactly what it is that we're asking them to do. I mean, are we wanting them to clean windows, just vacuum? I mean, what are we asking them to do?
I don't know if you've ever done this, but you could tentatively approve this pending the provision of this information.
Okay.
Or if the board so chooses, we could set aside my recommendation and then you act on it when you get the additional information, whichever way you so choose to do this. I don't think it will interrupt the service to the finance building.
Right. Okay. I don't know how.
Would your preference be to table it until you have supporting information?
That's the third thing you can do, table it.
Yeah, let's table it until we get that. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, can you state that in a motion like you?
Yes, let's table this motion until Ms. Riccardi gives me all of the scope of work and all of the information, please. I'd like to do that.
Does that require a recommendation or just a motion to table?
Recommendation would be in order.
I would recommend the tabling, and just remember that when we meet again, you have to have a motion to remove this item from the table, so you might want to make a notation somewhere.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know what concern Mr. Bassman has about the service.
Well, Dr. Berg, it's simple as, I'll use myself as an example. If somebody hires my welding service, and I don't tell them, okay, well, that didn't include, because it didn't say in here, it didn't include grinders, it didn't include the cutting tools, it didn't include this or that. I'd just like to see exactly are we requiring them to clean the windows, to just wipe things down? What exactly are we requiring them to do for this, in this contract? That's all.
This is all just at the finance building, and nothing, no other place?
They do the upstairs.
This contract is fine.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
This contract is just fine.
Didn't sound like a big
Madam
deal to me.
Chair.
I've been there a bunch of times.
I don't know if this is the correct time or place, but
Anyway.
if we're talking about cleaning services for LaBelle, are we still actively seeking a cleaning service for this office?
I'm not aware of that.
I thought we had, Ashley was no longer going to be doing the
And
cleaning
we
here
have extended Ashley through this year,
through the end of the year.
through the end of the year, at
Okay.
which time we'll go,
We can put out.
we can put out
Okay.
for a recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Now, that would include this building, adult school, and the welding shop.
Currently or
Pardon?
currently?
That's what she currently is doing.
It's a lot of cleaning.
All right, I got a recommendation to table. I got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion to table Vanguard Janitorial Services passes 4-1 with Berg opposing. All right, and now we're going to, under items for action is action item C. Sorry, I got so many notes right here. Action item C, which will be personnel recommendations. Do I have a recommendation from the superintendent?
Recommend approval of the personnel.
I have a recommendation, do I have a motion?
So move.
A
Second.
second, any discussion? So the discussion there will be under mine. For many meetings, I've stated my concern on the personnel recommendations when you have overtime or extra days work or anything that you have there. We do not have a number. And, I've stated that I didn't like it, and, I think you should be able to tell, based on somebody's salaries and benefits package, like how much per hour that these extra hours are gonna cost us. I don't think it would be that hard to add it in there. So, and until that happens, I'm not going to approve, I'm not gonna vote in favor of personnel recommendations till I know the fiscal impact that these recommendations are that we're approving. So that's just my comment on that.
When we do this, before it even gets here, we do a sheet, a form where Ms. Riccardi and her department have done that calculation. So it would just be a matter of putting a copy of that in, because we do that now. You just don't get it.
I thought you were
But
doing it.
it would be a very easy thing to do,
Well, I'd like to
because she's
see
tracking
that
the
going
budget.
forward.
She's tracking the budget based on that, and everything that moves, she signs off on. Then HR signs off, then I sign off, then it goes into the packet. But it would be a very easy thing, once we've done that, to put that in the packet. Now, sometimes it's gonna be larger than other times.
Well, part of our decision-making process is based on understanding the fiscal impact of our decisions. And, we're coming in here and approving personnel recommendations, and it's, you may know what those numbers are, but I don't. And as a member of the board, that's our job to understand
Sure.
those numbers.
But
So,
rest assured that you wouldn't get it if it was not kosher. But that's no big deal. We can handle that. What I need is a little bit more, do you want all of the professional development costs too, like if we send somebody there, or do you want this employee is getting extra money for doing this job or extended hours? We can provide all of it or a portion of it.
I don't even have to know individually, but when you're saying this X campus is gonna have these additional
Okay.
hours outside of contract hours, then I wanna know what
Like this.
what's the fiscal impact?
For the federal projects review of ELAC.
I don't need it one by one, but I do want to have some
Okay.
concrete numbers on that. So we are at the discussion area. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Personnel recommendations passed 4-1. Busen with the nay vote. Okay, this was action item F under the consent agenda, which was moved, line item F under consent is moved to action item D, revised 2019-20 administrative support and substitute temporary salary schedules. Do we have a recommendation?
I recommend approval of the administrative support salary schedule.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? So my discussion on this also is, we're looking at, I understand one of them is minimum wage went up, and so that's a non-negotiable on that one. But and I know that we approved on the administrative support that we approved like the job description change. But right now, we're rolling into budgetary discussions under board member business, and out of an abundance of concern, I don't know if that's something that I don't feel like I have enough information on to know if that expenditure is the right expenditure for the district, for the sustainability of the district, or and I think that decision is going to really depend on what the budget, what we're talking about in budget.
Okay, well, we're bringing this one highlighted. That's this, the specialist payroll personnel operations federal project. And what happens is we have to make sure this marries up to the description, to the pay schedule. So that's really all you're doing right now is getting it all in alignment. Because I believe, has the board already approved this at the last meeting?
They approved a job description.
The job description, so the job description, then this, it will align up.
Is
So that's
this
what this is.
an additional position?
No, this is a current position based on duties that have been assigned to that department because of the change in my department going from 2 deputy superintendents to 1. So this is not an additional person.
They've increased their workload
We've increased
or duties.
the duties of the person. And it was, this particular person is the one you called me about.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
would it, how hard would it be to give us the 18-19 comparison side by side? That way we can see what they were last year versus what they are for the new year. For the salary schedules there. Can you do that? How tough would that be to do?
I don't think it was 18, 19. I think it's been added into the mix.
No, I know, but I mean, when they send us this 19-20 salary schedule, last year's, what was last year, so we have a side-by-side comparison. Did things move, and how much did it move?
This one would not be a fair comparison because it did go up. So yes, you would basically look at all of these and say it's 2% more than it was the previous year. So if we grabbed an old salary schedule, we could just shoot that to you also.
Right, I'm just saying, anytime this is presented, just give us something to look at, knowing, and then in there, 2% raise or whatever, that way we've got a comparison from what we had.
How much did the specialist pay?
I would have to look at that.
See, that's what I mean right there, you would know exactly if they did that for us.
The job description changed, and so it went from, do you happen to remember exactly with the payroll specialist and federal projects?
Yeah, they're currently on that salary schedule. I don't think they took it off.
If you just subtract.
They were listed under the Federal Projects Office Program Manager salary.
But they don't have that.
They have that, yeah, it's listed right under the highlighted one.
Right, it's there, but what they're after is, what did it used to pay, what is it paying now?
It is, that
Oh,
salary.
okay, all right.
Wait.
This is what it was before. It was called, underneath the highlighted line was what it was called
Oh,
before.
I see.
And then what it is now.
Yeah, it's about $800.
All right.
All right.
All right, that'd be ridiculous, the regular one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's not. All right, thank you for the clarification. And so we have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, action item D passes unanimously. Did we do it?
One more class size reduction.
Oh, class size reduction, that's right. Here we go on line item D, 2019-20 class size reduction compliance plan has been moved to action item E. Do I have a recommendation?
I recommend approval of the class size reduction plan.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I really just had a question. All the schools are not listed here. Is there a reason why, or the other, I think only 5?
Right.
And
This won't, okay. I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Egley. This doesn't apply to every school in the district. It applies to those schools who had exceeded class size limits. So that's why you only have that number there. And this is a case where we say, this is what we're going to do to correct that problem so that our payback is reduced to the state.
Okay. That's what I have.
So it doesn't mean like we're ignoring a school for class size. If the school's not listed, they met class size.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I was after. And it also has here, after school year begins and up to October FTE week, after FTE week is all over. Is that what this class size is? Once you get the FTE week, then you don't worry about.
Okay, the one that they measure us by is the October count.
Oh, okay.
So that you will hear people say we've exceeded class size and we indeed may with growth, but there is no fiscal impact to us past October.
Oh, okay. So past October.
Past October, yes.
You can have 1 or 2 over or something. Okay. All right. That's all I need. Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? The 2019-20 class size reduction compliance plans passes unanimously. Now we're going to move to item A under board member business, and that's permission to advertise. Do I have a recommendation? A proposed bylaw revision.
Madam Chairman, I recommend that we vote to advertise volume 19, number 1, revised special and emergency meetings, which was last amended on the 2016.
Do you have a recommendation? Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Permission to advertise passes unanimously. And then under item B is discussion on RFP 20-0004, board legal services. And Ms. McCarty, if you could approach the dais and share your information with us.
Has the letter. In response to at the January 14th board meeting, 2 proposers made presentations to the board specifically related to the RFP 20-004 legal services. After that meeting, school board members began their final evaluations of those proposals to determine who they wanted to be the winner of the RFP. What they did was they basically ranked them, and with the first place, with Sniffen and Spellman getting 3 first places, and Watiski, Ross, McKinley, and Young, PA receiving 2 first places. Staff requests permission to begin contract negotiation with Sniffen and Spellman, who actually got first place based on the RFP results and evaluations.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I just hope that we don't have a lot of strange people coming in from the East Coast because they can't come or they send somebody different. And I sat there and talked to them, and they talked about oh, well, she's gonna be most of the time. I don't like that most of the time bit at all. I just thought I'd get myself that, that's all. I think it's, sorry we did that. Okay.
That was my major concern, so I wanted, but, it's what it is.
But the other people are 3 but 2, so I guess
We got enough.
So with the contract that we have with McKinley is, requires a 60-day separation clause, 60 days notice before we can separate that. But in the meantime, we could be working on the negotiation with, sorry, I'm not good with their name yet, Sniffen and Spellman.
Can I get a motion from someone on the board to accept Ms. Riccardi's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
In a second, all right, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2 with Dr. Berg and Reverend Brown with a nay vote. Okay, so now we are going to line item D, discussion on budget. And if Ms. Riccardi can come back down.
Which item are we actually on now?
We're on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm making up my agenda as I go, just kidding. This is going to be the budget amendments. It was item K on consent agenda, and it was moved to board member business item C. So it will be
Madam Chair.
the budget amendments.
I just need to bring this to your attention, that under the consent agenda, that this was on your add-on sheet for consent, but I feel like I need to make the recommendation to the board. So just so we don't forget, if you want to start with the budget amendments, then we can come back to this.
Let's do that now. Let me backtrack on this one. And we have additions to the consent agenda. Do you have a recommendation?
Consent agenda, this would be added under item 4. Original consent agenda.
You want to move it to an action item?
You move personnel to an action item. It wasn't
Okay,
on
but it would
consent.
be C under action item. I was getting to that in just a minute. So this would have been E, but it is now being added to C under action item. Additional personnel recommendations. The first one is termination of instruction for Gary Brickfield from Coolston High School. Termination, non-instruction, Nora Ramirez from CHS Bookkeeper, and Janet Rhea Delgado from ESE Parent Assistant. Then I also would recommend suspension with pay for the duration of January through today of Janet Rhea Delgado, an ESE Parent Assistant.
Have a recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, now let's take, I'm sorry. Item K, budget amendments for fiscal year 1920. We're going to move them to board member business item C. And so, Mr. Clark,
Would you prefer me here or up there?
come on up.
Okay.
Some good.
Now, this agenda item is actually part of a standard operating procedure that you all adopted a budget amendment mid-year and at year-end every year. The particular purpose is throughout the year, first of all, Florida statutes, or the Department of Education requires that we can't exceed what is approved in each of the major categories. So throughout the year, something may happen. For example, we budgeted for a grant without knowing what we were going to do with it, so we just budgeted in operating supplies. Throughout the year, we move that item into salaries because you know we're actually going to have reading, we're going to have people assist in the reading program or whatever. So my staff throughout the year is making budget amendments basically from the time the budget is adopted. Money's getting moved around little bits at a time, $100 here to $100 there. This is going to lead into a longer story, a longer problem that I'm going to talk about at the very end, because we've not been doing it with good documentation. Now, that doesn't mean that any money has been spent wrong before, it's just that for me to come up here and tell you that I moved $100 from travel or from training to travel or whatever, I can't do that with the documentation that we were doing up until about a month ago. So about a month ago, we stopped the way we were doing it. We started to use real budget amendment forms. So that's going to be to our benefit so that in the future I'll be able to say, well, we moved this on this date. Not that you would want that kind of detail, but you would want to know that I've got that. So I knew I would go off on that, but your policy, our board policy, requires that at least once a year before 60 days after year end, no later than the annual due date, which is September 11th, we must make all these changes. Well, for us to do all these changes by year end is crazy when we know we've got changes to make. So we've always done a mid-year budget adjustment. It may even be more prudent in the future to do them quarterly. As we know things are changing, we let you know things are changing. For example, we might have underestimated fingerprinting. I know that's one of the things we changed. We underestimated fingerprinting. Let's see. This amendment overall increases revenue by $204,000, with the primary increase being school recognition monies that we received, plus small grants donations such as Footsteps to Brilliance and Golden Apple. Tonight you accepted 2 more donations to Golden Apple, which meant we're going to go ahead and spend it because we've got the Golden Apple things, but we're going to have to come back and get that appropriated. So we'll come back and say, Golden Apple, we need to appropriate that. I'm sorry, I can't remember how much it was, but we'll come back for that at the next budget amendment. Total general fund expenditure budget is recommended to increase by almost $600,000. This covers, as you will recall and as you'll see later, the $456,000 prior year encumbrance rollover. Right at June 1st, July 1st, when the new year starts. The technology department closes all purchase orders from the prior year and rolls them over to the current year. That automatically creates a budget adjustment for those line items. Plus, so that was $456,000. The cost related to various grants noted previously, and that's to $177,000. We had a digital classroom budget that we'd added an error. There was a staff correction in the calculation of the FEFP, which caused a decrease. Again, most of the changes, again, there's a lot of big changes through here, but most of them is moving from line item to line item. My staff, going back to that purchase order thing, my staff took the $456,000 purchase orders that were rolled over. Let's say it was rolled over for $150, I'm picking a number out of the blue, and they spent $100 and they tried to close that purchase order. When they close that purchase order, we also decrease that budget by that $50. So it doesn't artificially, they don't get to play with an additional $50 for this year. It is, we make manual adjustments to that. Let's see, special revenue funds, the expenditure and revenue increase is almost $966,000. This increase is due to the receipt of unbudgeted grants, including a HVAC grant. You all have been aware of all these grants as they've been coming. Long term, I wonder if it wouldn't have been better for me to do the budget amendment at the time. Something as I'm learning this, that may be something that you all would find more easy to digest. If you see the grant come through and you see the budget adjustment come through. But there was also an FGCU personnel development grant. There was a correction of line items, as you can see in there. And for the capital projects funds, it was simply moving line items around. There was no net increase. So this is something that what we did at year end, and at that time I was not comfortable with it. And as I got into it more, I said, we've got to make a change, and so we are making a change to make it so that all of you will see it in the future. But for now, we just got to follow the rules, which is make sure that our line items tie with the state of Florida's, state of Florida's charter accounts. Questions, comments, concerns? Did you have a concern about this one in particular when you pulled it?
I want to go through the recommendation, the motion, and add comments under that. Is that all right with you?
As you wish. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something with my presentation.
All right. So on this
this budget discussion, the board is being asked to approve amendments. Do I have a recommendation from the superintendent?
Yes, to approve the budget amendments, correct.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? I have some.
I do as well, Madam Chair. Would you like me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Riccardi, it's about, I think it would be page 6, where you have the fund balance committed, fund balance assigned, and fund balance unassigned. Page 404 at the top, it says resolution number 1, page 404.
Right, in that line item, they are simply identifying that the $388,000 change, which is the difference between the revenues and the expenditures, would come from fund balance.
Okay, can we have zeros in those columns? Something is tickling in my head with board policy that we have to have a 6%.
That just means we're not changing anything. So you are correct that there's the zeros, there are no changes. We only track in the line items that my staff pulled, we don't track those line items that you're referring to in those line items. So we're not making a change to that. The 6% is still retained.
And how much is that?
It hasn't changed from the beginning of the year when we set it up, which is...
Because I was confused when I saw the zero.
Right, because we left it because she didn't make any changes to that. Hold on, I'll get that right here. The unassigned 6% has been $3,468,037.
It was a little confusing to me, because I want to make sure we're not violating board policy and we do have what we're supposed to have in there.
Is this the 3.46 million in unassigned? Would that subtract from the committed fund balance? Would that influence that number at all?
The unassigned does not. We have two separate fund balances, actually 3. We've got the restricted. So we've got restricted, which is not part of this. You've got committed and unassigned, as well as the unavailable, which would be your inventory, about $145,000 worth of inventory you have at any one time. So when you've got a total fund balance, it's interesting. If you'd like to, not to jump ahead, but we do talk about that a little bit in the next, this was just a lot to separate into 4 different items tonight. But one of the items that we're going to be talking about tonight is the monthly financial report. The monthly financial report, I think page 1 does have the current fund balance. The current fund balance is at 14 million overall, 14.9 right now. So you were concerned about whether or not you, at this moment in time, you're currently covered. Yes, you're currently covered. Because of that, 3.48 is the unassigned, which as required, your 6%. Is that what you're, okay.
Well, I'm concerned, because the policy I have it with me somewhere. 6220.
And it recently changed last year.
But it states that, you have to have that 6%. I just don't understand why it's not showing up on this piece of paper. Because if you have no change, you just put a 0 and
that I can't explain unless it's a typographical error, because there is no change. Ergo, it is exactly as it was.
Well, I don't understand why there's a 0 under the present budget for the assigned and the unassigned, and there's nothing there. I think it's unclear. We're missing some. From what the way I'm viewing it, is
right. They should have not had that at all. That is what is important. Because those numbers should not. Fund balance assigned at 2740 and 2750 should not be on there at all, because there's no change to those. Those have not changed.
Where you're talking. It is zeros out because there's no change in that.
Right.
It's showing a 0.
Yeah, it pulled up nothing because there's no change.
So that $6 million is still at work.
6% at
Six,
3.4.
yeah, the 6%, which totals a little more than 6 million. Nobody's dipped into that, or we have not moved any money out of that.
And so if we subtract, so help me understand this. So we're at 6 million. If we subtract that because we can't touch it at 3.46 million. What's left is what we really have to work with.
Right.
I don't think this is clear on this.
And it is not. And for that, I apologize. This has been the standard, the way it's been done for years and years. And it's the same format that's been brought to you every year, every 6 months, in fact. In fact, I think one year I did see multiple of these. I agree with you. I only assumed that because this was how you always had it, that this was how you always liked it. So for that, I would be delighted to reformat this. If you see my next one, I've already started for what makes sense to me to do a better job. But yeah, this was just, I'm assuming, I'm walking in assuming that this is how you all liked it because it's been done so long. So I apologize for that.
So of that 6%, remember the state requires 3%. So we would never, all sorts of warning flags go off with the state and everyone else if we go below 3% fund balance.
I think you all will actually, we'll be talking more about fund balance as we go into that final presentation of the day where you go into budget review.
It's almost like we should have done that one first.
Right, the only reason this one came up first is this one should have been done last month. We try to do this one during the month of January, from what I understand, just because, and we want to do a 6-month true up, if you will, of the budget.
I would like to see this reflect those numbers if we're going to sign on the dotted line for this. Because if, you folks are reading this memo, there's language in there that is, reminding us that this is our fiscal responsibility to make sure it's right. And
that's not a problem. I mean, the change.
I want those numbers there.
The changes are already made in our budget. So our budget system is ongoing. It is a dynamic document, from what I understand, Apex, which may not be the way, from what I understand, it is the way it happens because, as you saw, the state of Florida doesn't require you to make a budget amendment until September 11th, right? So at that, this does not even need to be made. We're trying to clear it up for our purposes and for your purposes, so we don't lose track of something. For example, the grants or whatever. But that's we can certainly do that for next time.
I'd like to see this cleaned up and hold off until the numbers are absolutely on the paper.
Madam Chair, could we hold a workshop so that we can dive into this maybe
into this one? I will tell you.
There's
more because there is a lot going on tonight. The only problem with this one, and that is going to be my issue with presenting it, is that normally I like to show you, this is what we did, this is what we did. Well, some of the budget amendments are made with a yellow sticky that says fix this. So it doesn't, again, it doesn't make anything higher or lower. You've still not used anything, moving money from a travel line item to a supplies line item. It doesn't cost anything. It's still the same $100, but I don't have any backup for it, which is what we're working on.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ricardo, you mentioned something about the maybe trying to move our budget amendments quarterly instead of biannually. I think I would like to see that. Do the
I'm sure I do at the moment.
I think it would.
I think we're shorten this up a bit.
Yes.
I do. I agree wholeheartedly.
I think it would definitely help keep everybody on the same page and bring some clarity to everything.
I do agree that that's because I think that this is so much that I brought to you all at once that and it doesn't seem like a regular occurrence because last time you saw this was 6 months ago. So yes, this should be something that you do on a regular basis. A budget is, you do not know what last year this time you didn't know exactly where you're going to spend money. So it is going to always be, you were shooting, aiming in the right direction and hoping to hit the spot, but it didn't. These were the areas that we missed the spot.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Another board member suggested we have a workshop sometime in the near future to help us better understand the process. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, ma'am. It kind of, Ms. Ricardi, it goes on the memo, there's a little paragraph that states, There are 3 different issues affecting this budget. After this discussion, it will become apparent that the district still has a budget issue, but a more manageable one. That's where I think I need some.
Okay, that's not this item now.
Right, well, I
But
mean,
it all
can we
ties
run
in.
it
Okay,
all?
okay, I just wanted to make sure that we
Just
got,
right.
that, believe me,
That's the
separating these was
amendments
hard for
and
me
the-
too.
Yeah. So that was my reasoning behind the budget, just to kind of get clarification on the whole puzzle, put the pieces together.
Okay.
I know it's asking a lot,
Yeah.
but I
agree. I would like
This is
to,
our.
Then that's-
I would like to have a budget, a workshop. You know, we don't have our workshops broadcast at that point, but that's the time for us to pull our tables up together. We're still in the sunshine, but it's the time for us to pull our tables up and put our heads together and dig in to some of these things that we're being asked to put our seal of approval on, you know, and the meantime, and it's,
If I could,
Go ahead.
okay, the numbers are correct. They need to be presented in a clearer fashion for you. There is no mandate that you approve anything on this tonight. There is a subsequent presentation that Ms. Riccardi is going to give today that clarifies and really pinpoints the bottom number that you need to really seriously work on as a board to get where you feel comfortable by not having any more budgeted deficits. And I think when you see this next piece of paper, when I kept saying there is more money, there is more money. So we are not in the desperate situation you may think. But you do need to see the number that you really need to attack. That will be the bottom line number at the end of this budget. So that's what I was saying, you probably needed to see what's coming up next first, and then this. But this is, the numbers are good, and they actually reflect about halfway where we should be at this year, when I looked at the totals.
Madam Chair, what she's getting ready to present, is that part of finding that 4 million that we have been looking so heavily for?
The one I kept saying, there's more money than this, there's more money than this, well, there's more money than, but if you'll recall, we were told when we had the budget hearing that you had $400,000 left by the end of this budget. That's not the case because of the things that Ms. Riccardi has uncovered. But that's the next presentation that's coming now. So I totally get what you're saying, and we can do this, and we can totally have a workshop session. I would recommend we do it. And I would recommend we start now so that we can attack that bottom line number that she's going to present to you. And be aware that the legislature, we have no idea what's going on there, with the exception of there's going to be some money somehow for beginning teacher salaries. But that is such a liquid piece of cement right now that would be hard to pinpoint. What I would recommend is that the board look at the budget and the money we have currently, not even count until we know what the state is going to do with that.
so are we in consensus to, you know, we can absorb listen to the budget amendment request? We don't have to have it done until September 11th. So do you want to just set it aside until we hear the rest of these presentations and then get the actual amendments to us where it's board compliant, policy compliant?
You want to table it or put it on the
Doesn't
regular
it have
agenda?
Does it have to be revised?
Well, the numbers will stay the same, but the presentation is going to be different and we hope more understandable. So really, I've made a recommendation. I can simply withdraw my recommendation because I don't think you voted on it.
No.
And so we will just continue to put this on the agenda.
Okay.
When I get the thumbs up from the board, we're ready to act on this.
Okay.
Everybody in agreement or consensus on that?
Okay, withdraw your recommendation.
I will withdraw my recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, and now let's move forward with the budget discussion for board meeting February 4th. Is another memo that we got from Ms. Riccardi.
There's more than that.
To make this easier to follow, I've tried to develop a PowerPoint but it's on paper. So in September 2019, the school district adopted a budget that showed a $5.987 million consumption of fund balance. This was an issue in part because it was the third year showing a budget with consumption of fund balance, growing every year, and because the end results were not consistent with the budget. We knew that with only $12 million on hand, which was what we had on hand, which we have on hand, that consumption, $6 million consumption is not sustainable, and it wasn't consistent with history, and that's what continued to bother everybody. It just wasn't consistent. Mr. Paletti, the superintendent, was telling you there's something that's not feeling right about this. So with that in mind, I set out on a mission with the direction of you all to find out what was wrong with our budget and fix it. And in summary, I found 3 things that make this whole budget process start to make sense, and I'm going to address it one at a time. Restricted funds, which are budgeted commitments, overstated line item, and then finally, the budget just wasn't in balance. Starting with the first item, if you were following along on the paperwork, that would be probably page number 5, the budgeted commitments. So first I want to just focus on this. Actual 18-19 showed a surplus. As you can see on that page, when we look at 18-19, it shows that we had $58 million in revenue, $56 million in expenditures for a $1.48 million increase in fund balance, and that's what the reports showed. So if you follow to the next page, and then of course then you go into 18-19. If you go to the next page though, even though the year ended with a surplus, we still owed from that cash, from those revenues, $1.8 million. That is, during the 18-19 budget year, we had earned and recorded as revenue $1.8 million for specific categoricals or real commitments. If we did as appropriate, or as we could, and either charged the expenditures to that year or held the revenue as a reserve for future years, that would show that last year, jumping ahead to page 7, if you were able to take those $1.8 million of restricted funds out of the fiscal year they were appropriated in, you would see that we consumed $316,000. So that is, to me, the big key. We did not go from a positive 1.48 to the negative 1.5 or a 5.9. In essence, $1.8 million is showing in the wrong year because the money was received and recorded last year, and yet we're budgeting it again this year. Big deal, yes. It doesn't change much the bottom line. It simply moves it from year to year. But if you keep going, if you say, fine, let's apply that $1.8 million to last year, that still doesn't exactly fix this year. You'll look on page 8. If you take the current year, that is the current year 1920, budgeted revenues and expenditures, excluding the prior year commitments, that is the revenue of $57 million, the expenditures are now only $61.9 million, where we still have a big consumption of fund balance. So basically, what this, in summary, last year, instead of being a positive 1.4 million, that should show a use of fund balance. That year should have used fund balance. That would have been a warning sign too if we'd seen that. But because of governmental accounting and how that works, it's there and you'd see it, you'll see it. We did show it, but it wasn't as obvious. But it's categoricals and other commitments, and do you know what a categorical is? Everybody knows what that word is, right? Categoricals might be money within the FEP allowance for digital classrooms or research-based reading instruction. It was given to us last year to spend last year. We didn't spend it. but we have to spend it on last year's program and recorded the money last year. Anyway, so
Page are you on?
I backed up, I'm on page, I just finished up page 8. So this year, we're at the negative fund amount we are consuming, if we exclude that $1.8 million, we decrease fund balance $4.8 million. Now, that goes to my next problem. Remember I said there were 3 problems. One was the budgeted commitments, the other one was simply an overstated budget. Not to complain, but this was a hard budget to review. We had 3 different sets of budget CFO hands in this at any one time, throughout the time. None of them together, none of them were the same, none of them did things the same way. There was a loss of tracking of information causing items to be duplicated, plugged, or estimated and estimated poorly. Finance lost its accounting supervisor during the year. She passed away, taking with her years of institutional knowledge. Transition is never going to be easy, and this budget shows that. As I indicated earlier, sometimes budget changes were made to the budget on a slip of paper, a number on a spreadsheet, a yellow sticky, stuff that was in the head of the writer that knew exactly. If I know exactly I'm doing this and I'm going to be here to talk to you about it later, may not have written it down well. And that's kind of what they happened. Everybody knew that they were going to be here at the end to talk about it, and they weren't. That's not the type of that's not how we're going to do it in the future, because we never know who's going to be here. Anyway, so in this packet, you saw budget amendment number 2. Budget amendment number 2 is a follow-up to budget amendment number 1, which we tabled earlier, or we withdrew earlier. That's okay, because this is still really an important budget amendment. This budget amendment presents a savings of $2.2 million. This is specifically related to the items that we'd already seen that I've nailed through, I don't want to say fingernail, clawed through to find these. Insurance was over budget by $276,000. Unemployment was over budget. They were estimated, then guesstimated, and not necessarily done right. Salaries, we had a balancing. I think I told you how they were doing some of the budgeting for salaries. When it was all said and done, apparently one of the CFOs said that's not enough money. He did the report that you asked for, the salary matrix, and he says we need another $1 million. That got entered twice. Or it was a little bit more, it was approximately $1 million. That number got entered in twice. Of that though, it wasn't bad, because some of that needed to be applied to the best and brightest. Best and brightest was not budgeted. Or let me rephrase that. It was probably budgeted as part of that $1 million whatever dollars. So it was there. That's just a move from one line out to the other. Finance professional services, I think I told you that was based on prior years. We were budgeting for TSA and one other contract that we don't have to pay for anymore. In this particular budget amendment that was in your packet, I made some minor corrections that should have, now that you bring up and you wanted to postpone budget item number 1, I could probably throw those back into budget item number 1, because we have a K-12 contract coordinator. The board approved that several weeks ago, and that's being fully funded by the K-12 contract. So I have to have the budgeted expense, but I'm going to have a budgeted revenue. That's showing in this budget amendment. Hurricane Dorian, we spent about $20,000 to run those shelters. Thank you, to run the shelters, and we're going to get $20,000, get the money back for that. So that again is going to be a budget increase and a budget revenue increase.
Have we actually gotten that money back from?
No, but we did send out a bill. We did bill them.
Okay, so I want to know what's actually there. I don't want to know what's been billed.
Well, but right now we didn't, no. But remember, anytime you do a budget, you're expecting that people pay you for your services rendered. So we agreed that they were going to provide that. We agree that the state of Florida is going to give us our money for FEFPs. I spend the money even though I haven't gotten it yet. So we do have to budget it even though we don't know it's there. There's a expectation, for example, fingerprinting. We don't know if fingerprint is going to be $30,000 or $40,000 this year. But we have to budget something so we have a proof of revenue. Or a confidence that there's a revenue, excuse me. So anyways, going on, if you look at page 11, that is where you finally get to the number that you were looking for. And that was, I have the revenue, I have the expenditures, which is adjusted because the expenditures for the prior year. Budget amendment number 2, that means this year's impact, that is revenues minus expenditures of the current year only, is still negative almost $1.98 million, just over $1.98 million.
And if I could interrupt you for a minute, once you go through this and once your comfort level gets up, that is the budgeted fund, that is the budgeted deficit that we had approved. If the board, or when the board looks at its budget, that 1.9 or almost 2 million is what you need to start whittling down. Okay?
So, this leads me to the problem number 3, and that is the budget needs to be balanced. The budget, but primarily that leads us to future budget practices. Definitely we need to identify a clear auditing trail for budgeting amendments. That's probably about the 4th time I've said that tonight, because that's where my hands have been trying to find things out. Staffing was tied to budget. As you found out just now, or as we talked about earlier, several weeks ago, that multi-million-dollar worth of plug line item for salaries isn't good enough. That's not the way, I can see in your eyes, that's not the way you would expect me to do that. You would expect me to say, this person costs $40,000. What's that number that you were trying to pick on a number for the overtime that you have to approve. You want me to be able to say, because I'm tracking it now, right? I'm tracking it, that I've got $300,000 this year that I need to spend on these type of things. It's not going to be 100%, that one you know, but if it's in this document, then all of a sudden we'll all be understanding where the money's going. And I think that's where we weren't matching up. Details need to be included in the budget. In the Apex system, we've met with Apex themselves. Apex has updated the system so that we can fix that in the future, so that is fixed. So for those contracts that I was talking about for mine, you would actually see that in the line item budget. So during the fiscal year, and maybe I'm not a good example, let's say it's in HR or another department. As a contract comes through for whatever, I'll be able to look down that list in Apex and say, aha, I see where this was budgeted, instead of just, he's got $70,000 budgeted for an item. Supervisors and managers will have to be given more accountability for their expenditures, but that means giving them information. So that's not saying you can't spend that money. It's saying, here's your information so you know how to spend it properly. Now, that leads me to page 13, which is the budget deficit adoption. It is okay to adopt a budget with a deficit, specifically when we use the funds committed from a prior year. That is what you all did with that $1.8 million that I just talked, that very first $1.88 million. That was funds were committed from the prior year for categoricals. That is what you're supposed to do. Anytime beyond that, if we as a group are going to use a fund balance, you've got a one-time revenue source. That's all that is. You would not use a one-time revenue source to fund an ongoing expense. You could use it for items such as a one-time computer upgrade, a special study, special training, capital, fences, that type of thing. That would be an excellent use of fund balance. That's what emergencies are another great use. If you were going to use it, like right now, when this is all said and done, let's say we are going to use that $1.98 million, and let's say I'm off, and it's going to be $1.4 million, or something even less. It's okay if and only if you've got a long-term plan to eliminate that use. That's where Mr. Paletti and I think Madam Chair was saying that we need to talk about it, make sure how do we want to make this balance, and from that, is it okay to continue to use fund balance? Sure. Let's say that we whittle it down to $600,000 this year, and next year we're only going to use $300,000. That's okay because you've got all that surplus that you will see on my next page. I forgot any more. So I was getting excited about this. You can see, I do love to talk about fund balance because to me it is so important to recognize what you can do with it and what you can't. If you look on page 14, this should look extremely familiar to all of you. This was in your original budget packet. This was where the committed fund balance shocked everyone and said, what are we going to, that's not right. So, it is directly out of the original budget packet. Slide 15 now takes that packet and amends it for what you're doing right now. Basically it says, you know what, the restricted funds belong in the prior year. So our beginning fund balance is not 12 million, it's only 10 million. We're good with that. We've reduced our consumption of fund balance then from, it was originally at one point, it was originally 5.9 million, now it's only 2 million. And instead of having a 1.76 committed fund balance, you're gonna have a 4.62. That still leaves, as you had asked previously, does that leave our unassigned fund balance intact? Yes. So at the end of the fiscal year, your adjusted fund balance, which would be your inventories, your unassigned and your committed fund balances, would be 8.23. So again, that's, I think, where you wanted this to head towards. It does not solve the problem that Vice Chairman Nelson had asked, or that Madam Chair had asked, and that is we're still $2 million out. Based on this, until we start pulling out the needles and threads, and I have done some of that, and I thought, I should not be the one. Now that I know what I'm looking at, I should not be the one to pull this apart. I think it's got to be a board effort. Everyone's got to be looking at what we're spending.
And can I just add my?
It's your turn now.
My turn for just a few. In the past, I would go to the board and say, look, you're good for 2 more years. Based on what we've done, we have bought 2 more years. You have made it abundantly clear that's not how you want to go. So if we will start attacking that 1.9, almost 2 million figure, you're going to be in better shape. Nothing says you have to do it all at once. If you look at it and say, yeah, we can find a way to do that, and you have talked about it other times, let's look at programs, look at everything. That's what we need to look at. But you can, if you take $1 million out, you're halfway there. The other little thing I want to caution you on is that there are other eyes than ours that look at that 4.6, and they're going to be asking for it. Okay? So we need to hang firm until you get to a comfort level that that's what you want to bargain on, because that is traditionally what the units will look at, is how much money do you have left over, and they're going to see that 4.6 and they're going to say, why aren't you spending it on us? I'm not saying anything that I care if they hear, because that's exactly what they do. That's what I used to do. Okay? Absolutely. Now you have the picture of where our money is. That's why I kept saying this doesn't look right. That's when I met with you individually at the beginning of the process, saying there is something not right here. So this is where it is. You have all the data. If there's anything else that we need to provide you, I will make sure that Ms. Riccardi gets that to you. Each one of you can contact Ms. Riccardi individually if you want to, ask certain questions to chisel into that number. That's exactly why we've started this expenditure sheet for extra money. That's why we've done it, that people are getting, and it has to be sustainable, and believe it or not, we have said, no, can't do it. And most of the time, it can go through, but if Ms. Riccardi says this is not sustainable, we don't do it. Okay?
Does this require a vote, or can we hold off on this until
That's
there's a
information.
workshop?
That's information.
Okay.
Right, and I did include resolution number 2, and that does, again, it doesn't require, the only reason why I would like to do it is because I'd like to make sure that nothing happens to that money along the way, that it doesn't get funded. So maybe I can be just directed to go ahead and make that change and swipe that money out. That may be the best way, so that we know, because right now I'm looking at a number that says $1,700,000 or whatever in the budget. I need to take it away. So that's the only reason why I would want this budget reduction hit into place now. That would just be swipe number 1. For example, let's look at my budget. That $40,000. If something comes up and I'll say, you know what, I need a set of chairs, and I go ahead and spend that money on a set of chairs, then I wouldn't do that, but it is a possibility as long as it's in my appropriation. So that would be my only recommendation why I would want that one approved.
Well, I'm just a little nervous here, because we're cutting a bunch from salary. I feel like I need more information, make sure like what do our salary lapses look like, actuals and 'cause we're cutting a big chunk
Right.
out of salaries. And so I just feel like I need more backup supporting
Sure.
documentation to make a good choice.
There are 2,700, maybe 2,800 line items in just the general fund. Had there not been so much, I believe that that would be a great place to start. It's actually too much for any of you to really try to review. That being said, you know, when you were talking about, you had asked for a copy of the salary matrix. Salary matrix was budgeted salaries at the beginning of the year. Throughout the year, we've also had grants that were budgeted, going back to original budget amendment number 1. Budget amendment number 1 showed where maybe we budgeted in a 5,200, we budgeted $600,000 in that line item with the intent to hire nurses or whatever. So that, although the original budget is in the salary matrix throughout the year, we've been increasing that just for those positions. But it was part of a grant, so it's identified as a grant throughout the budget document. I think a budget workshop would really help you all see these, even if I showed you the line item details.
I think it should be plural. I don't think you need one. I think you need the multiple.
I agree.
I
I
have
think
no
we
issues
need
with that.
to decide when we're gonna take the plunge and do the first one.
Do we need to attach it to a board?
Do we meet again this month? I would say 2 weeks from now.
You wanna do it prior to a meeting? I know you have, like, schedule constraints, Mr. Vasquez. I've heard Reverend Brown's, schedule constraints on the phone before.
What are we thinking, an hour? Start at 4:30? I guess 4 o'clock, that gives us time to go for an hour.
3:30? I could use a lot of time. I mean, this can take up a lot of y'all's time.
If we can do an hour at a time, I think that
Okay.
would work. An hour ahead of each
You
meeting.
can make a list of the things we need to learn about.
Okay.
And then each meeting, you can do a little bit of.
Okay.
That's something.
I don't know. This is gonna be fun.
That way it gives us time to stop for people to come in. If we go from 4 to 5, and it gives us a little window if we go over a little bit before our meeting actually starts at 5:30.
And could we
Yes,
get,
time.
No, it's not, no, I don't need more time. I want to make sure that whatever I present is at least a good start, so maybe if you could kind of throw something at me that I know what I'm doing.
exactly, and that's what we need, the board direction on what you want to see.
Okay. So, whatever you can dumb down, for lack of a better term, in the first hour to make it where we can really understand the beginning of this process, what we need to attack. What would your recommendations be?
Mr. Paletti, you have any?
One of the problems that got us, and again, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus for where we were, but where we need to do is go to that zero-based, that modified zero-based budgeting, so that we're not just adding to and reintroducing and doing the same things. That's where, like in my instance, in my budget, that's where it came. If you budget me $10,000 and I spend $5,000, but then the next year you just give me another $10,000 because that's what I had, my budget's just gone up $15,000. So what I would almost say that we start with departments, and within the departments, the programs that are in there with what those programs are, and whether the board actually feels that they're needed with the numbers that go on. When you get into salaries, you're gonna have to keep in mind, a lot of those are bargained.
Yes.
And so you're actually gonna do, probably the easiest thing, do we need that position if it's vacant? Or those things. So look at, that would be, I think, where we should start by department. But you're not gonna be able to get all of the departments in an hour. And that first hour, we're probably gonna generate more questions than answers.
If we go department by department, do 1 hour for this for one department, and then that'll give us a better idea, a better understanding.
Ricardi has some
My
consternation.
only concern, and this is because this is great, But my only concern now is we're bumping up against starting next year's budget. And if you want to do a zero base for next year, I'm concerned that would it be better to simply start with next year's budgeting?
Yes.
Let this year, and I know I'm gonna meet some resistance, but basically let this year lapse as it is. And with my tightening, with my $2 million tightening that I recommended, because I don't think you're going to be able to do a zero-based budgeting and maybe review every department, unless you can find some specific areas that we want to target. Maybe that would be the best way. Start with yours in my budget or whatever. You're one of the bigger, the superintendent's office. Just go line item by line item, so at least you understand it. Is that kind of is that what you're thinking? Or?
As long as the board has a full view of what that is and what that line item represents.
But who would know that?
Yes.
You know, truthfully, without having those details that I was telling you about that's going to be in next year's budget, details aren't there. For some of, I think the departments, that being said, I think the departments out there would have their own. I think you do have, most of you do know what your contracts are. So if you're looking at some of those.
I would like to talk about, you know, when I'm looking here at this financial report.
Great start.
And we are, you know, talking about budgeting going forward, and, you know, still, I'm still concerned about what we're in right now, but I'm looking at 8.4% overall increases from 18-19, another 8.4 increase, and, you know, where are we spending it? You know,
Okay.
right? I mean, we're increasing the spending here.
Madam Chair, you had suggested before, basically we start at the top and go down. Do you remember saying something like that when we just tackle it? I think you said we could do 2 schools a day. And maybe instead we do a school and a department, just as much as we can. Would that maybe be a good direction? At least then you all would be we'd all be looking at along the same lines. Is that reasonable? Is that?
I don't know anything about running a school, clearly. And, you know, so I don't know where, are we going to bring administrations from these schools and departments in to join in this budget discussion?
I would never think we wouldn't, but we would have to. There would have to be somebody there who can at least, because I don't know enough about their schools. I can see what they've spent. I can see who's being allocated where. Part of this exercise, too, has been great because I've found throughout the way people who have been misallocated. So we've been able to make a lot of corrections along the way, which has been rewarding.
Let's go school by school.
Okay, so what are we going to do about, do we want to go by schools or we want to start departments first?
That's a lot of them.
You think we could do a school and a department in one meeting?
I have no clue.
Your suggestion?
I think that's a great place to start. Because I think that would give you a warm-up to say, okay, we don't care to see any more schools because we know exactly what we're doing now. I think that's where you're going to end up like me. You're going to end up looking at that and saying, wait, the schools is relatively easy. They've got teachers, they've got benefits, and everything else is programs. It's assigned. You can't, you know, we can't move money from the SAI or any of those categoricals. So that may be a good example, is that we take one school and then we pick on one department.
And maybe just one of the high school, one of the middle school, one of the elementary. Do we need to do all? No, not per meeting. I'm just saying over the course of 3 different
You may find out that it's not necessary,
yeah,
but
if we need more, we can always, but maybe do one.
This is y'all's program. We can do whatever. I can do them all. I will do them all if you all direct me to.
I'm very interested in, you know, we look on our financial report, page 2 of that, and we have our spending as far as school goes per student. There's a big variance in there of what's being spent per school. So let's, you know.
Let's start with a school and her budget.
Which school? I mean, I want to start with, you know, who's spending the most first.
That would be the Bell Elementary. If you're going per student, is it 36, 26? Oh, no. There's one other one. Although the youth academies are also high. They're not. I think it looks like that's the highest one.
LES? Let's go with LES and Ms. Riccardi's budget.
What I would do is I will give you all basically the line item details of the budget. and you'll see what the line items look like. 'Cause I don't think you've ever gotten to see that, have you?
Not in a number of years.
Okay, I think
What I
that's.
see in your office on the computer screen.
Okay,
but different.
and that basically, that's almost what I'll do, only it'll look a little bit neater for us all. So we can look, I mean, that's a great place to start.
So we'll meet at your office?
No, I think we're gonna do it in a board meeting.
Board
Do that
Prior
before.
to the board
So we're
meeting,
doing it in Lavelle.
it'll be
at
in
4
Lavelle
o'clock.
at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in November. Sounds good.
Mr. Flood, is that suitable? Is that okay? Does that, all right?
And then we'll be able to use this time to figure out, pace ourselves and figure out what we're gonna need going forward in the future.
Get the first one under our belt.
And the discussion, like for LES, remember, it doesn't seem fair at all that in order for a school to get more money, they have to fail. And that's a fund that you won't be able to have to deal with. You won't be able to deal with because you see the cost per student at LES is significantly higher because they had an F. Now, does that feel right? No, but that's the way that that's the world we operate in.
But providing them that peek into it will
Yeah.
help me understand more what the board would like as financial presentations too.
Right.
Because I'm thinking that I'm missing something, not just me, I think the finance has been missing presenting you information because you have so many questions. So I think that would be a great opportunity.
Let me ask this, Mr. Superintendent. Superintendent.
Mr. Flood.
Do you think LES be the first place to start if they're not gonna be with that same type budget now?
It matters not to me where you folks want to start. I'm just pointing out LES is an outlier.
That number's not
because
gonna be
of
the
that
same
issue.
after all this.
I mean, it would be good so that you could look at the various funds and determine what goes into the cost per pupil. The cost per pupil numbers. So it would be a good place to start. And then, but it doesn't have to be the place to start. It would just give you an idea of the state dollars that come in through UNICEF, through some of the HOPE grant things, through those things that are for LES.
Those dollars are a result of them making a bad grade, right? They got some increase
A
on
lot of it is, yes.
So if we start with that first, it seems like that would be because the
Yeah,
other
that would help
schools.
you explain why so much more is being spent per student at LES.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Kind of.
What? I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was looking at something else.
Yeah.
What are we looking like on FTE counts right now?
We're looking good. Are we blowing the roof off of the house? No, but we're not dropping. The one outlier that I want to talk to you about is K-12. Because if you look at FTE counts in this latest calculation, Hendry County leads the state in increase. But it's important to remember, and I just went to Tallahassee to argue this point, those aren't our students. We are the fiscal agent for that group.
Right.
So we will get a percentage of that. At most, it might hit us on declining enrollment, but sparsity funds would be what we would worry about. And the sparsity law was written a long time before virtual school was ever conceived. So we are positioning ourselves in every run of budgets that has come through the House or the Senate right now still has us having all that. And that was our argument. Don't count that those aren't our students. If they were here, we would be singing a different song.
Right.
But we are providing services across the state and not housing and educating children in Hendry County.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because then that would increase our tax rolls from everything else if we were housing.
Yeah, it would be a different story.
Okay.
So are we in danger of, sparsity being in?
No, I would not, I don't think we're in danger. It was a flag that was raised because it's the number of schools that you have. And we would be in jeopardy under the current law if they counted all of those students as us, and they're not ours. So that's why we have been visiting legislators last week and in constant contact, and all the budget runs. We even met with Senator Stargell, who's the Senate budget person on education, and they get it. They understand what's going on. And the runs still have us with sparsity.
Good.
And because of that designation, it's not going to impact like our Title I's or our, anything like that, or our rural funding or anything.
That didn't even blip on the radar.
And class
And
size, we're looking at
the cost,
no dings.
the amount that we will generate through K-12 is going to exceed what their estimate was, because it's like there are more students than they thought they would have, and we get a piece of that action upon completion. So they pay for the employee who is their liaison, and we get the 5% statewide to Hendry County. So that's a revenue stream you have not had before.
Right. Okay. Fantastic.
All right, so we don't require a vote on the financial report, it's just here for our review. And see if I missed anything, I don't believe so.
If I could,
All right, well, I was going to acknowledge Mr. Atkins. Well, actually, do you want to do board member business first and then take five? You have, Mr. Atkinson, we didn't want to not give you an opportunity to speak if you were here to see. Just an observer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No speaking, just watching us. All right. Okay, so with that, do we have any further board member business? Starting down at the end of the dais.
Two things. I'm still stuck on the Bell Elementary. There are additional information and additional work that that principal has to do based on the grade they've made, like other stuff they've had to do or still doing at the Bell Elementary. Because of the grade they made is a lot.
well, because you didn't get a full report, because remember, they raised from an F to a C.
Okay.
So the school that did report to us this year was the one who was a D, which was Clewiston Middle. But you need to know what things are still doing there.
No, I'm asking questions because I don't want to add more to the principal having to do things if we go to them first and look at the budget. If she's already dealing with a lot of issues as it is, both middle schools are doing the same.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna start there, fine, I just want to make sure I make mention that she may already have a load to get the school back where it's supposed to be. We're gonna add more to her boat. But if not, then, you know, be okay. My second one is, I need to make a motion that the air conditioner get turned down, it's too cold on here.
We'll debate that one, so.
It is.
We got a second on that one, let's take it to
The air must
discussion.
be blowing over that. It's not
Feel
over
good.
here.
Okay, nothing else.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure, that was the new principal for the Clewiston Middle School, did I understand that correctly? That you introduced?
Yes.
And
I would introduce them, and we are still going to have a community meet and greet. And what had happened is we re-advertised. Actually, we never pulled the advertisement down, but we did reassert ourselves. 0 applicants. Added to the 2 that we had.
Okay.
The 2 that we had, the one lives in LaBelle and came to me yesterday saying, I really think that the people in Clewiston want someone from Clewiston to be here. And so she then withdrew. The work that they've done, even though she is going to be a brand new principal, is there are changes that have happened at that campus that are good. And we will guide her toward the assembling of her team. I think we saw some good things coming tonight from the FFA, and there are things that are going on there that we want to put as good a team in that school as possible. So she will officially, I will meet with the staff tomorrow, and we will make the announcement of the first Tina. Mrs. Wills will then report, she will take a few days off and then report to LaBelle with Dr. Monday through the end of this year, because there are some things that might be happening in LaBelle that I really need her to be in LaBelle anyway. And I'm not, if you want to call me later, I'll talk to you about the things that are happening in LaBelle individually, but I don't want to talk about it right now.
I was just kind of curious about that because it kind of threw me off. I thought that the meet and greet type situation was so that everybody could introduce and see the candidates and then kind of say.
We have one, and when you're comfortable with the one, from my standpoint, we still need to have the community piece involved there.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know that Ms. Wills withdrew herself.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was a little premature. I wish you would have waited until we had a meet and greet session so everybody could say, give their personal opinions.
She withdrew herself. And there was no, there was no pressure or any kind of thing from me or for anyone who withdrew their names from me for that position.
That was the only question I had. I was just kind of curious about that.
Do we have somebody I know she was, if Ms. Kelly is going to move to principal, where does that leave us as an AP? And do we have all the deans?
That's what we'll be working on when I talk about her establishing her team. That's what we'll be working on the next few days. Now, she will also be mentored, she will have to do it, but her instincts have proven to be good so far. And I think they will be good.
It's a tough lift. And, we got a new principal, who is new to principalship. And so I hope there is a very robust support plan in place to fill those administrative positions. Because when you're running on a skeleton staff like that, it's the school morale and culture and the students who are, get the short of the stick on that. So I hope we are very robust in that support. And I would like to be kept up to date on that. What we're doing to support her and what, if someone like myself or what the community could do to help support that and make that a good transition.
Ms. Nelson, I'll save you some verbiage. Due to unforeseen circumstances with Reverend Brown in preschool, he has come to me and asked if I could take over the Value Adjustment Board for him. So I'm bringing that up for discussion. I'm fine with doing it. But if we do, we need an alternate. Oh, I love Value Adjustment Board.
I still an alternate.
You'll do alternate? Yeah. Okay. You can get away from those babies?
I'll break away.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Board Member Nelson serving as our Value Adjustment Board representative with Reverend Brown as the alternate. We have a consensus. Yay, everybody? Okay.
Do it.
We've got that handled.
That's it.
All right. And don't have too much tonight for my own personal part of our business, so you have anything?
Yes, thank you for remembering me.
We move down the line.
First of all, I want to remind everyone about the Employee of the Year luncheon tomorrow. I think we've heard from 3 of you, but 2 of you, if you need to RSVP, and I can get you in. So let me know, before 11 o'clock tomorrow.
I appreciate it, Mr. Flood. Unfortunately, I am not going to be able to make it. Business duties call.
It'll be tight. I'll try to give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Bring the babies.
I also need to bring
You
you
can
up.
ride with me, but the kids no.
I need to bring you up to date on HESPA negotiations. I don't need to ask for any other parameter. They have declared impasse. We're gonna make one more attempt, that during impasse, we can still bargain. And we're gonna make another couple of runs at them to see if we can come to a settlement.
Didn't you offer 2% to them? And they would not accept? Rascals.
Well, that's, yeah. I also want to bring you up to date, up to speed on processes. We had some terminations tonight. Those people can come back and ask for a hearing before the board. All right? They have a time certain in which to do that. But we will walk you through that if and when it comes.
Are we anticipating that?
Pardon?
Are we anticipating that?
I'm just warning you. No, I'm not anticipating it, but I'm just warning you that it could happen.
Oh, Madam Chair, I just thought of something else, Mr. Paletti, swamp cabbage. Do you have a plan? Do we know what?
Well, we know what it is, but I don't know if we're riding or walking.
Well, I've offered my husband's truck, we have a trailer if we need that. I don't have access to a buggy. We did the school bus.
Fast one used to, I don't know if it still does.
But I'm hoping by discussing it early enough, we can.
I think most of those guys have sold them already.
Okay. Now, because of that, you folks want candy?
Because not having a buggy.
No.
Oh.
Just, we normally have candy. Do y'all want candy?
I'll have some
Okay.
candy.
I like candy.
Okay. Well, it's not for you, it's for the.
Oh.
Here's your candy.
Okay.
Okay, well, if you do need our vehicle or,
Well, why don't we count on your vehicle?
I'll make sure it's clean.
Okay.
Is everyone attending?
I don't know yet.
Okay. You'll let us know when you know.
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay, that's all.
All right, guys, do we have anything else on board member business? We do not. With that, meeting is adjourned.